The full how to play it today breakdown is linked in the description on their check.com. For Enduro Racer, that matters more than usual, because the real answer is not which version should you buy, it is whether this is worth chasing at all. And for most players, the answer is probably no. Enduro Racer is a Sega arcade racing curiosity from the mid-80s. It has historical value, especially if you care about Sega's fast, sprite scaling, arcade races, and the line of thinking around games like Hang On and Outrun. It is quick, physical, obstacle heavy, and built around that old arcade idea of reacting hard, learning the course, and surviving just a little longer next time. That can still be interesting. But interesting is not the same as easy to recommend. The main problem is not that Enduro Racer is unplayable today. The problem is that it does not have a clean, obvious, mainstream legal path for a new player. The arcade original is the version that makes the most historical sense, but that version is not sitting there as a simple modern download. The old official digital route people may remember was the Wii Virtual Console release, and that was based on the Master System version, not the arcade original. New Wii Shop purchases are no longer a normal option, so the practical value here is narrow. If you already have legal access, or if you are specifically exploring Sega arcade history, Enduro Racer is worth a look. If you are just retro curious and want a great Sega racer to play tonight, this is not where I would send you first. You are better served by a more accessible Sega arcade racer, like Outrun or Virtua Racing in their modern Sega Ages releases, where the legal path and the player experience are much cleaner. That is the core recommendation. Enduro Racer is historically interesting, but hard to recommend for most modern players. So, how can you play it legally today? For a normal new buyer, there is no good mainstream legal option clearly available. The Wii Virtual Console version existed, but the Wii Shop Channel is closed to new purchases. If you already bought it back then, you may still have access through your own Wii setup. But that is not a realistic recommendation for someone starting fresh. Original hardware is another possibility, but that immediately becomes enthusiast territory. Arcade access, original boards, Master System cartridges, imports, old hardware, working displays, region concerns, all of that is outside the low friction lane. It may be legal and valid for the right person, but it is not the answer most viewers are looking for, and that is why there is no neat best version for most people here. The arcade original is the purest answer. It is the version that best represents what Enduro Racer was meant to be. A short, fast arcade machine built around physical presence and quick reactions. The Master System version matters because it was the most relevant home version, and because it was the basis for that old Wii Virtual Console release. But it is not a straight replacement for the arcade game. It plays like a materially different home adaptation, and secondary documentation points to meaningful differences between regional Master System versions too, with the Japanese version being the one enthusiasts usually care about more. That is exactly the trap with Enduro Racer. The version you are most likely to encounter legally is not necessarily the version people mean when they talk about the original arcade game. And the version purists would point to is not easy for most people to play legally today. So the recommendation is not play this version. It is do not go out of your way unless you already know why you are interested. If you do play it, the first thing to understand is that Enduro Racer is not a smooth modern racing game. Treat it like an arcade survival run. The course, the bumps, the jumps, the other riders, and the obstacles are the game. You are not just steering through a track. You are learning when the game wants you to lift, angle jump, or commit. The bike handling and jumps matter early. Wheelies and terrain are part of the rhythm, and failure can feel abrupt if you are expecting readable modern track design. The game is not trying to onboard you gently. It wants you to learn through hits, crashes, and repetition. That is also why guide help should stay limited. You do not need a full walkthrough. You need the right mindset. Watch the course, expect memorization, and do not assume the Master System version tells you much about the arcade original. If your first reaction is "this feels harsh," you are not missing a giant, hidden system. That is part of the old arcade bargain. For enthusiasts, there is still something here. Enduro Racer shows a stranger, rougher branch of Sega's racing history. It is not as clean a modern recommendation as Outrun. It is not as easy to point to as Virtua Racing. It is less available, less convenient, and more compromised depending on the version you play. But as a curiosity, it has a place. As a recommendation, it is weak. So the clean decision is this. Play Enduro Racer if you already have legal access, or if you are deliberately studying Sega's arcade racing lineage. Skip it if you want the best practical Sega racing entry point today. The full legal access breakdown is on the darecheck.com page in the description, but the short version is simple. This one is more interesting to understand than it is easy to recommend.